Roses are red, violets are blue. Harry got a figure, and he's coming for you. Here's a look at the NECA toys, My Bloody Valentine, the ultimate miner. A decades-old folk tale surrounding a deranged murderer killing those who celebrate Valentine's Day turns out to be true to legend when a group defies the killer's orders and people start turning up dead. It happened once, it happened twice, cancel the dance, it'll happen thrice. Before, of course, we get a closer look at the Ultimate Miner from My Bloody Valentine, let me send out a heart-shaped box thank you to the folks over at NECA Toys that did provide this sample we could have a look at. We have gotten a retro cloth release of Harry Warden or the Miner from before, and of course I'll bring that figure in a second, but I'm really super excited to get finally an ultimate, fully articulated version of the Miner that I could put on display. One of my all-time favorite slashers. The Miner, though, stands about 7¼ inches in height, or he's going to be about 18½ centimeters tall. Yeah, about that retro cloth Miner. Here's what the figure looks like with him. This figure did, in fact, get 2 releases, a very limited run that came included with a Scream Factory release of My Bloody Valentine. I believe either on, was it steel case? I think it was a steel case edition, but then they eventually did get a clamshell release that was released retail-wide. The figure-wise, they're not that much different in size. Of course, the smaller scale Harry Warden that's going to have the fully articulated body is the one that we're going to be looking at in this review, but like the retro cloth release, isn't that really that much bigger? Another figure I did also want to bring in for comparison's sake, you may be scratching your head. You bring in a Michael Myers simply just because you're talking about seasonal slashers? Well, actually, not only that, but also if you look at Michael Myers, he's sharing a lot of the same elements that are going to be carried over to the Miner here. Specifically, the tops of the shoulder area. So like this part of the arm down to the bicep, or I guess really down to the elbow, because it also shares the same double hinge on the elbow. And he also is sharing the exact same thigh sections as well. If you were lucky enough, though, to get that retro cloth release Miner, then all the accessories that we get included with this ultimate release, in fact, are the same ones. Well, not exactly the same. You'll kind of see what I mean in a second. First, the figure comes included with a knife. The knife itself is fairly soft in plastic. You can see like the blade, for example, has been painted nicely here in silver, while the rest of the handle is all molded here in black plastic. I'm going to be bringing in all the other accessories that came included with the other Harry Warden, so you can see the differences between the two. I would be looking at the 2 knives, and I would be swearing to you that they are exactly the same. Maybe, if anything, like the end of the blade is a little bit different here for the retro cloth release, but I mean, like size-wise, they're almost identical to one another. The figure also as well comes included with the bolt or nail gun that he uses in the movie. A gruesome-looking death, and he fires off several rounds. The actual nail gun itself is also one that shares with the same retro cloth release. And other than really just painting it slightly different, the one to the top that has more of the silver is actually the one that came included with the retro cloth release. The smaller one, actually, and you can see it is slightly smaller, has more of the black on the top, and it's a little bit more movie accurate. Other than that, though, almost about the same size, but size-wise, I would give it just to the retro cloth release for being slightly bit bigger. The figure as well comes included with his pickaxe. The pickaxe has been very nicely molded. One thing I really like about the pickaxe, and one thing that NECA does consistently well, is that they always go in and add these wood grains to the wood handles to kind of give it a little bit more look like wood. Now, also to bring back in the pickaxe is very notably bigger here on the retro cloth release, and it's also a lot darker too. You don't get as much of a chance to have the fun with the wood grain because it's really not here present on the retro cloth release. It's definitely a lot more present here when it comes to this release that comes with the Ultimate Miner. And the last thing that comes included with the figure is the box of chocolates. Well, you may be thinking I'm going to be turned off by the idea of going in there and looking for nougats. Nougat is kind of like one of those. Actually, that's not true. One of the last things I always usually look at when it comes to boxes of chocolates are things that filled with fruits. Oranges with chocolate, I think, is a no-go. And cherries inside of chocolate just doesn't work for me either. But what you'd find inside is not left behind chocolate, but the left behind remains of someone that Harry Warden has already killed. You can see that the blood is circling around the heart that's left behind in the tray. I would imagine, though, just a little bit of jostling around. There probably should have been blood all around this as well. I can't imagine that he's glued the heart to the inside of the box. Maybe he's very, very efficient. Maybe he's very detailed-oriented when it comes to that. The heart-shaped box, to bring back in the one we got here with the retro cloth release, is a little bit bigger on the retros release. It also has more of a trim around the edges. This one doesn't have as much of it, but it has a lot more pattern work to it. Ideally, really, you could use either both of these, or if you wanted to, you can actually have, just choose this one if you want to have it with Harry Warden. The Miner, for example, you can see, let me open up both the boxes so you guys can, there we go. I will say one thing I really like about the retro cloth release a little bit more is that the inside of it actually does have kind of, I would imagine to be kind of like, you know, the kind of that paper film that when you take it off, it's in between kind of the layers of the chocolate. Or sometimes if you are lucky enough to get gifted a box of chocolates, this never happened for me, by the way, sometimes they actually have kind of a little packing material on the inside. The retro cloth release did have that. The regular Ultimate release does not, unfortunately, have it. I also like the darker coloring of the heart for this version rather than this version here. And then again, like, it's just simply a case of taking the lid and the lids just fit over top of it, making sure, of course, you got the right ones. Yeah, definitely different looking accessories. I think the only one I would almost even say is still the same as maybe the knife. But again, like looking at the knives again. Yeah, I mean, looking at the handle now, it's even more apparent. Retro cloth release is a little bit longer of a knife. So those are all the accessories that come included with Harry. Funny enough, though, on the back of the packaging, it also says for the accessories, a pair of interchangeable hands. The only hands he, in fact, comes included with are the ones that are currently on the ends of his gloves. So he doesn't actually come with any interchangeable hands. Any one of these hands, by the way, he only really has two, is more than enough to accommodate. Now, this hand is already actually set for triggering firing of something. So if you wanted to, for example, you could put the bolt gun into that. And that just slides down. I will say, like, the plastic that they use for the hands is a fairly rigid plastic. It wasn't the most forgiving of plastic, so I end up heating this up just a little bit with not a hot water trick, but rather, excuse me, running a few passes with a hairdryer instead, and that was more than enough. He holds that. I mean, obviously, he holds the pickaxe. We did that at the beginning of the video. The pickaxe just, again, slides down his hand like that. Or, again, like you also have it on this hand as well. At least he has the benefit, while not necessarily living up to the details on the back of the box, at least he has two gripping hands already out the box. So you don't even have to worry about swapping out anything if he had, say, like closed fists, which really wouldn't have made sense, I feel, for someone like the Ultimate Miner. Speaking of the Miner, though, getting a closer look at the head sculpt here, really, really interesting design for the Miner. One of my favorite things. He's actually one of my favorite slasher designs as well. Not only is the original My Bloody Valentine from the 80s my go-to when it comes to top slashers, I would say it even ranks top 3 for me at least. Harry Warden or the Miner is also one of the most notably memorable killers when it comes to those 80s movies. A simple rinse and repeat when it comes to really all of the killers. When we initially got, of course, Michael Myers introduced things in 1978. You could even predate that by 74 for Leatherface. I mean, obviously, he sort of set the benchmark for slasher movies after that. And, of course, I feel like while there's a lot of generic killers out there during the 80s and even 90s, Harry Warden is really one that still stands out to me. Now, this one actually isn't that much different. I'm going to bring back in the original one that we did get from before. You can see there are a few little notable things, like, for example, where like the first one only really just had silver on the inside of his, his little helmet light there, for example. This version of the Ultimate Miner at least does have his helmet light on, so you can see all the better the people he's wanting to kill. The interesting thing also about the Miner is while both of them are wearing, of course, the gas masks and the miner's hats, this benefits actually this figure by having one that's removable. Some of you may have not even known this, but you can actually take this whole helmet piece off. You kind of want to keep the helmet intact because the helmet is actually attached to the front of the face. But in fact, you could take the whole thing off. It's actually easiest just to kind of hold it from the bottom of his gas mask. You want to be careful of this wire because this wire is going to attach to the battery pack on the side of the figure's body. But all the rest of it, though, you can easily slide off. And that's what the killer looks like underneath there. I'm not going to give it away for anybody that hasn't yet seen the original 80s slashing, I was going to say slashing classic, but I guess it is a classic. It's not really one that I feel has picked up a love for the film until like years after its release. I don't recall it actually doing all that well in the theaters, but there's what the killer would look like underneath the mask. I'm not going to reveal who the killer is. You'd have to see the movie for yourself. I love the idea that, in fact, actually there is a removable piece to Harry Warden, so you just simply take that off. There you go, call him Harry Warden again. Just simply take off the miner's contraption, like his gas mask and, of course, his helmet on the top, and you actually got yourself a very nicely sculpted surprise face underneath. Literally and figuratively. I mean, look how surprised the look is on this character's face. Very cool looking additional Easter egg there. Obviously, for me, I'm going to be displaying the figure at all times with the gas mask, but the fact that NECA would take the time as they did, as they always do when it comes to these horror releases, to add these cool little Easter eggs, thank goodness for the fact that they're doing figures like this. Now, I did already mention the fact that the gas mask, on the back of it, does have the wire. That wire runs all the way to the side here where he has the battery pack. But then he also has the breathing apparatus here on the front of his gas mask that runs by a very soft hose, and that connects actually onto the other side of the figure's body. When it comes to his actual articulation that we'll look at more in a moment, it doesn't limit necessarily where I feel like I'm turning it back and forth and this is going to get way too tight or this is going to get way too tight. They seem to have allotted for enough allowance here, at least on the figure, that when it comes to, again, rotating him, I don't feel like I'm worrying about breaking anything in the process. Bring you back in here, Michael Myers here for a second. While the bodies are going to be very different from one to the other, I should have really brought in the H2 Myers. I'm wondering if that in fact is using the same body build for that. But you can definitely see when it comes to like this part of the figure's body, the tops of his sleeves and even more importantly his elbows are actually shared between the two figures. The lower forearms, for example, are going to be differently because they would have had to retool gloves on the ends of the Ultimate Miner. And actually, when you look at the thighs are sculpted exactly the same as well. Not the lower half, because like the gloves, they would have had to sculpt brand new pieces for at least this part of the figure's body. But the top half seems to be shared with a 2018 Michael Myers. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if it was also shared with other Myers from other NECA releases as well. Now, for the figure's articulation, the Ultimate Miner does have a ball joint. I'm going to twist this back and forth. Even though I'm not really necessarily worried about the wire on the back, I'm not really worried even about the hose there on the front. One thing I am worried about, though, is I just don't want to damage the mask and all, because, of course, it does have rubber straps there on the back. And, of course, you don't want that to rip in the process. But he does move back and forth. He does look up. He does look down. And, of course, you can also rock it back and forth as well. The thing he is limited, though, is similar to what Michael Myers would be limited in. He doesn't really have any waist articulation. It seems like there is something working behind the scenes where I may be able to do a crunch up and down, but rotating it back and forth is not going to happen here on this figure. The figure also has, as well, arm articulation. He hinges out at the shoulders, but only hinges out at about 45 degrees. You take those arms and rotate them all the way around. Just be careful while you're doing it that you don't hit the battery wire in the process. Figure has a double hinge on the elbow. Good to see that. The hand as well rotates all the way around. It's always nice to see that. And it also hinges back and forth. The Miner's legs do split out. And when they split out, you can see it kind of does stretch the battery pack on the side. But it does split, and almost a full splits there, so you can bring those out. There's the hinges actually working behind the scenes. The Miner's legs do move forward. You can move them back. There's a swivel at the top of the thigh, a single hinge only on the knee. The lower leg does rotate. And when it comes to his boots, the boots move up and down and back and forth. Sorry, what? You were saying what, sir? Yeah, go ahead. Oh, yeah. I didn't really get the chance to really show you the boots. Quickly wanted to show you guys the work that they did sculpt into those. Really nice looking figure. I wonder if this guy could actually be used again, tooling him slightly again to get a release of the Prowler. Anybody remembers the Prowler? Maybe not as successful of a movie. It did have Savini's work there behind the scenes and really a gruesome looking kills on some of them. But a really neat looking Miner. Once again, we'll just put down to the Miner here the ultimate release of him. We'll bring back in the retrocloth release of the Miner. I always feel like when it comes to NECA, and correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like it's always a case where they sort of test the waters first in retrocloth figures, because of course they really only need to retool or sculpt a brand new head sculpt, and a lot of times they just need to add the accessories onto the figure. The fabricing or the tailoring of these costumes, I would imagine, aren't the most expensive of things. It's always tooling brand new bodies. And maybe that's the reasoning why they did test the waters first when it came to a retrocloth release of the Miner, then eventually releasing the ultimate release when they saw, obviously, there was popular demand for a figure to get released of him. And while, again, I'm looking at him, I'm thinking there's probably a lot more elements than just the 2018 Michael Myers that I did bring in. I'm thinking maybe the torso may have been used maybe from the H2 Michael Myers, judging again by the higher collar there also as well. But yeah, even though he's using some of the elements from a Michael Myers release from before, I am super stoked, super excited that we finally got ourselves an Ultimate Miner, and the fact that it also does have a removable mask. So it does give you a bit of a reveal who the killer actually is, even though really it's only just the eyes, so it might leave unsuspecting, unviewed viewers who haven't seen yet the movie still guessing who's the killer behind the mask. And of course, curiosity did get the better of me. I went back to my 2-pack Michael Myers that came included with Dr. Sam Loomis, and looking at the two now, I was right. They are using, again, a lot of the same elements. It looks like they are using in fact, the same body between the Miner and the H2 Michael Myers. As when you look at the pocket, short of the fact, of course, this Michael Myers did have bullet holes all on the front of his torso, but it does look like they're using the same torso, the same, in fact, arms, except for, of course, the gloves, the same lower legs, except for the boots. And again, I'm okay with that if it meant we finally got a chance to get ourselves an Ultimate Miner release. Roses are red, violets are blue, one is dead and so are you. Jumping now over to the final look of the Ultimate Miner from the 1981 classic slasher My Bloody Valentine. I've got the miner currently displayed with the bolt or nail gun they uses to kill off Hollis, and I've got the figure displayed also as well with the heart-shaped box on the other hand. Unfortunately though, with the ledge of the plastic around the lip of the heart-shaped box, and with the way that the hands are already designated more for holding weapons, he really doesn't have an easy time at all to hold the box of chocolates. Now, actually, funny enough, though, on the back of the packaging, NECA did write in that the figure was going to have at one point interchangeable hands. Maybe the other hands, literally on the other hand, that the figure was going to have was maybe a hand for better holding the box of chocolates, and it might have very well been something that they decided to scrap. It's no foul at all. In fact, I'm just going to have the figure ultimately displayed on my shelf just with the box of chocolates resting against his arm. I don't know whether I'm going to be displaying him with the nail or bolt gun or if I'm going to be displaying him with the pickaxe. I kind of feel like the pickaxe is his more go-to weapon, especially more in the remake. He's using that pickaxe basically to kill everybody. So I might just end up displaying the figure with, I think, the pickaxe and then the box of chocolates in his other hand. Nice touch, though, also on NECA's part. I did mention in this review, the fact that he does have a removable gas mask and helmet. Something that didn't even need to be there. The retro cloth release of the miner didn't have that benefit, but the fact that they threw that in also the ultimate release, fantastic work on NECA's part, finally giving me the one figure I've been asking for the last, I don't know how many years. I think in several reviews, you could probably even date that back, that I kept saying the one figure I want NECA to release above all others, just because I was a big fan of the original 1981 My Bloody Valentine, is please NECA release an Ultimate Miner, and they did release an Ultimate Miner. Now, whether we are going to be getting a remake Ultimate Miner from the 2000s film, that would be certainly something I would love to see, maybe with interchangeable heads. I'm sure they probably could easily just use the body again, get the most mileage out of the mold after all, but maybe release. Just consider this, NECA, down the road, a remake of My Bloody Valentine Ultimate Miner. But what do you guys think of the figure? Let me know down below in the comments section. Have you had the chance to pick this one up? And do you also agree that, I mean, the miner is one of the coolest looking slasher killers around from the 80s films? What other killers do you think from old 80s horror movies would you say is a really cool design that you'd like to see NECA release a figure for? Let me know down below in the comments section. If you, in the meantime, though, you guys did enjoy this video, want to hit with a like. If you guys are loving the content you guys are seeing, and you would like to stick around for more NECA reviews, hey, by the way, we are looking at some more NECA reviews. Yay, says the majority of the crowd. Nay, says one person that wanted more superhero reviews. Don't worry, we will be looking at other things also as well. Making sure, of course, that you're not missing out on anything by, once again, hitting that subscribe and by turning on the bell notification, and make sure you're coming back to this channel regularly with the frequency in which the person behind the camera is always uploading new content. As always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.